tell the story of God and man, of Mary and Joseph and Bethlehem. Rhythms on a donkey ride, a journey for the mother and the child inside. Hallelujah.
Hello, good morning. I'm Paul Wagler.
And I'm Virginia Bowen.
We're out here in a beautiful spring day, looking out over the gardens behind us. You might be able to see the roof of Virginia's house, which is about 100 feet from where we're sitting. That's where she and her 3 children and her husband live. And I live right behind you, and Virginia will probably show you a picture of our house at some point too.
Yeah, perhaps we were talking about putting it in the intro, show you a bit of this place that we live. Paul likes to call it Blackberry Abbey, and you can tell the story behind that.
Yeah, Blackberry Abbey comes from the fact that when we moved here, there were more blackberry vines and bushes all over the property than we could count. And we managed to tear out all the ones we didn't want and to create a huge blackberry patch. And the Abbey part comes from the fact that we have an enormous great room in the house that looks like it should be part of an abbey.
So there you go. That's the Blackberry Abbey title, and it's found that it was rather interesting, intriguing title. So a little history for you there. Today I think we're talking about self-improvement. Is that it?
Yeah. Well, looking after ourselves, caring for ourselves for a lifetime, and avoiding neglecting ourselves. And it's a huge topic, so all we're going to do is dip in to little bits and pieces of it, but we hope that this might cause you to think about areas where you might be able to care for yourself better. I've found that people who don't take care of themselves can't take care of other people either. So when it says love your neighbor as yourself, I would reverse that and say love yourself so that you can love your neighbor.
Yeah. That's definitely something that growing up in the church I found that was rather overlooked. The whole love your neighbor as you love yourself, the love yourself part. And I myself have been really learning what that means the last couple of years, and what that looks like to take care of myself, because unless you're actively practicing self-care. I mean, I remember self-care, that term in itself. I remember a few years ago hearing that term or reading it in a magazine, and I really didn't even know what it meant. Like, self-care, what is that?
Yeah.
This is an abstract notion here.
I use the term investing in yourself, and there are dozens of ways that you can invest in yourself: your health, your career, your finances, your education, your things that you do for fun, investing in the people around you. And we won't be able to cover all of them, but I just thought I would tell you a little bit about my history. When I was a young boy, I was disabled, as I've mentioned before. And so my first thing was to invest in learning how to take care of myself, because I hated to ask other people to do things for me that I really wanted to do for myself. And it turned out to be a really good call.
So what do you think that took? Because I mean, that type of life predicament, circumstances, that could go one of two ways. I mean, if there was you who didn't like to have to ask for help, but for another person it would be like, oh, woe is me, and kind of being stuck in a bit of a rut. Do you think that that's a lot to do with your own personality and your motivation, or is that part of your upbringing?
Yeah, although I will say I was one of 9 children, and my mother said it's fortunate that it was me who had this particular ailment, because she said before having polio, I had the most upbeat personality of any of her kids, and she doesn't know how they would have dealt with this kind of enormous disabling disease. But I think we all at times feel like we're victim, and that we all feel at times like we're competent. but we have the power to choose to become less victim and more self-competent if we make that a choice and we're willing to make the sacrifice and pay the cost. I could easily have spent my entire life living on state-supported whatever, but they would never have put me into a house like I live now with all the wonderful things I have if I had decided to be a victim.
So, for our viewers watching this, I know for myself that, you know, everybody has their own interpretation of what being a victim is and what that looks like. And I've even just over the last couple of years, as I've been taking care of myself or making more of an effort to take care of myself, I've been able to address further, you know, victim mentalities that I didn't even realize were there. So what are some, I guess, some starting places to be able to you know, deconstruct the narrative you have in your mind that's actually not working in your favor?
Yeah. Well, all of us experience bad things and bad people. There's no doubt. And if you want to look at it from a victim standpoint, it's true. You know, all of us have illnesses and we have circumstances that are really horrible. They're just shit, if you pardon the French. And we meet people that treat us rudely and terribly. But we also have a choice of how we respond to that. Nobody can avoid these things, but we can change how we respond to them. And that's really the fundamental thing. And I don't think that's learned in a day or a week or a month or a year. But if you know it's there, I find that if I remember something that is true, then from time to time when I'm going the wrong direction and feeling sorry for myself and wishing somebody else would take care of me and take this bad thing away from me, when I wake up the next morning, I say, no, I'm capable of dealing with this.
Yeah, and that's quite an empowering thought to give yourself that you know, being aware that yes, it's up to me, and I do have the power to influence you know, the trajectory of my life. Another thing that just popped into my head though when you were saying that bad things happen to all of us, and you know, to be expectant, you know, that things are going to go south at some point or another throughout our lives. It made me think of this radio show I was listening to one time, and it was talking about there's a certain group of people, I forget, I'm not going to say which country because I'll probably get the wrong country, but somewhere in Southeast Asia, it's very, very a part of their everyday language to talk about death. You know, like they talk about death more than any other country in the world. But these people are also the happiest, apparently, like, you know, by whatever surveys they do to measure happiness, you know. But these people are apparently very happy and fulfilled in their lives. And so I guess there was this correlation of, you know, knowing that life is not permanent, you know, and to really be living present in the moment and living in gratitude. And I think sometimes in the first world, you know, here in Canada anyways, and even in the United States and wherever, that, you know, we are able to enjoy so many things like so abundantly, it can be really easy to lose sight of just the everyday simple pleasures of just even being able to walk, you know, and being able to drink your water unhindered, or clean water unhindered, or, you know, whatever it is, right?
No, definitely there are lots of people that have 10% of the income that a well-off person in North America would have, or 100th of the income, that live happier. In fact, of the billionaires, and I've met a few in my lifetime, I would say it's not an easy life. I would say it's quite a horrible life. If somebody offered me $1 billion tomorrow, I think I would say no.
That's interesting, eh?
Yeah. And also the awareness of death. I mean, objectively speaking, I'm 71 years old, and unlike Virginia, I don't have 50, 60, 70 years of life expectancy ahead of me. But I do have the choice of, do I live every day thinking about, is this the day I'm going to die, or just let it come naturally and not worry about it, which is really what I've managed to do. I very rarely, unless I have a terrible health malady cropping up, or what could be one. Like in 2011, I nearly did die. But I think after that experience, I realized, death is not the great thing to fear. It's life that we should be afraid of. If we don't live life correctly, that's horrible. I think that's really our biggest challenge, is living today and living this year and living next year.
That is quite a profound thought. I mean, I think everybody here, could agree that we're all just trying to do our best in this life. But I think we're also juggling, especially. I know. I guess in this era where we have everything is so fast paced, you have the internet and text messaging and everything's so quick, and I think there's this immense pressure to try to do it all and be it all, and it's kind of driving everybody a little crazy. Like, I find myself going like, okay, what do I focus on first? And I suspect that it wasn't quite like supposed to be that way, or it definitely couldn't have been that way, because things have sped up in the last few years.
I think all the new modern inventions have given us the opportunity to improve our life enormously, but they've also, as you pointed out, given us the chance to make us race quicker and quicker and go berserk. And I, for one, have decided to limit the amount of time that I spend watching TV, which is a few hours a week, and limit the amount of time I spend on Facebook or other media. Not that I don't enjoy them, I do, but I think I may have mentioned another time when we were talking about relationships, I got a few emails yesterday, and for every email I got, I picked up the phone and called the person.
Wow.
Rather than responding by email or text. Almost, in most of them.
And tell us again why you do that, because you were telling me the other day.
We really need contact with the earth and with real human beings. When I send you an email, I'm only seeing 10% of you. I would say if you're too far away, then I would prefer a video chat, or at least a telephone call. But a text really doesn't tell me your context.
Totally.
And I can completely misconstrue your text. I may get what you're feeling and what you're doing completely wrong, but on the phone I get a lot more information, much more with a video chat.
So true.
And if I can be right next to you, I get a total sense of where you're at, where you're coming from, and what's good and what's not in your life, and you get that sense of me.
And this is so key for self-care too, because what we put into ourselves, and like how we are able to understand those around us, really has an impact on our mood, and on how much space it's taking up in our brain. Like, oh, is that person, that seemed like a very there wasn't a lot of emotion in that text. Maybe they're mad at me or something. You can start to misconstrue things, like as you said, and that's just really not worth any of our brain space. And I mean, yes, you can develop the ability to read text as simply as just whatever they say, but like you said, if you go take it a step further and actually make a phone call, I think there's something really, really beautiful that happens in that personal connection. They're able to empathize with you. You can't empathize as well over a text. I mean, you can say, "Oh, I'm sorry," but you don't hear the feeling. You don't see the facial expressions.
Yeah, emojis are no excuse for
emojis. Yeah, we've tried anyway.
Yeah, you might have heard an airplane flying behind Virginia. That's the one thing that we can't edit out too easily. We're not on a flight path for any major airport, but the ocean, which is about half a kilometer behind me, is a path along which a number of small aircraft fly. And when they do fly by, you don't hear any other noise here, except I can hear a creek that's about 100 feet away running down. It's probably too quiet for you to hear, but when an airplane flies over, you are going to hear it.
Yeah. When I was a child, the house I grew up in was actually right under the flight path, so planes were going over like every 5 minutes, and like big, jumbo jets, and they'd cast a shadow all over my whole cul-de-sac. So I don't
Yeah.
even notice these ones.
Yeah, the other thing is we have our big dog here, and every once in a while she'll decide to bark if she hears somebody coming nearby or whatever. So if you hear a bark in the background, it's nothing to be concerned about. Shiraz is really a lovely dog.
Just like fine wine.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry we got a little bit off, but I just wanted to go back to the self-care thing and say two things. One is I think we need to pick as many people as we can who are people who are caring toward us, because they will improve our self-care. But the other thing I heard in a lecture by Jordan Peterson, he said we should care for ourselves as well as our best friend might care for ourselves, because often people do not care for themselves. And he used the example of when doctors prescribe medicine, 1/3 of the people who get a prescription will never even fill it.
Wow.
And another third will not take it regularly. For their pets, they do far better. And if you had a good friend like my wife, she asks me regularly whether I'm taking the pills I'm supposed to, and she would be disturbed if I didn't take my medicines. So when we care for ourselves, we need to do it as well as somebody who truly loves us, rather than wondering whether we deserve this or whether it's worth the while for us to care for ourselves.
It's really, it comes down to back to our topic of last week, or was it the week before, but talking about community, building community, because I think we all do better when we invite others into our lives to, like you said, to hold us accountable for, any number of disciplines that we're trying to undertake, but just to even share, like, I think we have something built into our spirits that we want to share what we're doing, and we want to share food and share our thoughts. And I think if we're not doing that, that's one form of not getting the self-care self-neglect. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also our close friends and family will know in an instant whether we are hurting or really down, or maybe even getting coming down with an illness, and they'll equally see in a moment whether it is a good day for us, whether we're joyful, whether whatever. And that's something that close friendship and close community, it really has no option. And as I've mentioned in the thing on relationships, people who live a totally isolated world, which has only got television and media, is lacking something very important, just as somebody who never puts their foot on the earth and sees a tree or grass or ocean or rivers.
So obviously, my thoughts go to people who live like right in the deepest part of the city. They're not as able to, well, not that they're not able to, but what my question is, what can we offer to people who find it hard to connect with others, whether it's because they are deeply introverted and shy, or whether they work so much that they don't even have time to make friends, or they any number of obstacles. Like how do you change, break through those.
Well, we
things.
could have mentioned this in our thing on relationships, but all these things are intermingled. But one of the things that I do, whether I'm in my little small town or whether I go into Vancouver, which is a big town, is most people that I see for more than 10 or 20 seconds, I'll say, hello, how are you? My name is Paul, what's your name? And even though a lot of people will just ignore you and look away, it's surprising how many people are ready to engage in a conversation. And but you have to be willing to put yourself out there. And the other thing you need to do is when somebody says hello to you, instead of saying, oh, this is probably an evil person who's trying to take away my money and kidnap me and whatever.
Suspicious element.
That's not likely. I mean, I'm not saying if they come at you with a knife, but I'm saying most people who are your neighbors, if you look them in the eye and you smile and you say, are you having a good day? You can break through the ice and build relationships almost anywhere you are.
Yeah, and it's that just small step of stepping outside of your comfort zone, because I think especially like if you're so used to to just kind of averting your eyes when you walk past somebody on the street, it can be really easy to just, that's your default. But, you know, as you said, to just make that effort to say hello, or, you know, if you're standing in line or something, to make a comment, you know, about something funny that just happened behind you, or, you know, whatever. Take any opportunity to connect. Really, it's about connecting with people, and knowing that does make you know, such a small thing makes a profound impact, because, you know, maybe that for all you know, that could have been the only interaction that was genuine that their whole day. You know, all the other interactions might have been all work based, and, you know, everything to do with business, and you know, maybe just a customer service rep, you know, being like, doing their dutiful how are you, but it's not genuine, not personal, right?
Well, but
Yeah.
a very major part of that, and this is not something that hasn't been said by many people, but is slowing yourself down from time to time. I mean, we need rest. I mean, when I worked on Wall Street and in many big towns, I had a ritual that every hour at minimum, I would stop for 5 minutes to look out the window or talk to somebody, or really slow myself down and stop just pushing to try and get the maximum amount accomplished for what I was working. And when we slow down, if we see another person, it's much easier to hear them and for them to hear us.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to get you know, get wrapped into this idea that you know, if I just keep plugging through, you know, I can get more done. And maybe the reverse is actually true, that if we're just running ourselves ragged, that we're getting less done, because our brains are not as you know, clear, and not able to just, you know, we're missing things that we might otherwise catch if you, like you said,
Yeah.
you just take 5 minutes on the hour or whatever to just look out the window, or to connect with somebody, or what have you, right? You gotta recharge.
I've found that doing the right thing is more important to do the most things. And if you don't have a certain amount of quiet where you can reflect on what you're doing and see whether it feels good or it doesn't feel good, that going in the right direction. I mean, somebody said if you don't know where you're going, any direction will do. And I find that when we are intentional and reflective, we can say, well, I really must see the doctor today, or I really must plant these plants that need to be planted. And I told my sister the other day, you know, you can make, if you make a list of 10 things that need doing, almost invariably the top 2 or the top 1 on the list will be more important than all the rest of the things of the list. And if you don't know which is most important, you can spend all your time scrubbing and re-scrubbing something that really didn't need that kind of attention, instead of taking care of a child who really needs you.
Right? What do they call that? Busy work?
Yeah. Being compulsive and obsessive.
Yep. Yeah. I find that I can easily get into that, and because I think sometimes, like, I tell myself, like, oh, I need to have this, you know, kitchen cleaned so that I can think straight or whatever. But, you know, maybe there's another way. Maybe I just need to get out of my kitchen and go outside or something, right?
Well, I
You know,
think
so
having
searching for
things
other outlets.
moderately tidy and moderately clean
is
hugely important.
Yeah, not to discourage that, but
to have
when
them,
it becomes obsessive,
but have
right?
them to try and make it so that you can't see any dirt with a magnifying glass. That's complete insanity.
Yeah. And I mean, for one person, it might be you know, a cleanliness thing. For another person, it might be, you know, work. It might be like an office job. It might be working out. It might be cooking. I don't know.
Yeah,
It could be any number of
I'll
things.
just give you one example. In my career, I was in banking, and my job was to find major clients for my bank. And one of the things that I did is I would do a lot of preparation for seeing clients, and I would do a huge amount of follow-up, so that this client would be impressed both by the preparation I had done, how much I knew about them, and how much I cared about that, and they'd be impressed that I did the maximum amount of follow-up that somebody could do. And as a result, my office became extremely successful compared to other offices where people would go out and try and call on as many people as they could in a day or in a week or in a month. But then they would find when they wanted to call the same potential customer again, they wouldn't take the call and they didn't want to see them anymore. I really believe that serving one customer really well has more advantages than trying to serve 10 or 20 by just running through the front of their noses.
Yep. It's about the connection thing, right? Here's the dog.
Yeah, you may see the dog at some point. Anyway, going back to the taking care of yourself, this isn't an obsession, but it's just something when you invest in yourself, when you invest in your career, in your finances, in your health, which at 71 is one of the things I know, in your relationships and so on, you become a much more happy person, a more successful person, and your life becomes better. And when you're negligent and you just do whatever feels good, like for today, get another bottle of scotch or whatever pills or drugs you like and say, boy, this will make me feel good, there's always fatal consequences tomorrow when we haven't invested good things into ourselves, as opposed to just sort of say, well, life is going to hell. Why not make the best of it for the next 10 minutes?
And I think another component of that that's really important is like that everybody's journey is going to look different, right? And so, it's so easy to look at, your neighbor and think like, oh, he was an alcoholic and now look at him, he's doing all this amazing stuff and, oh, I'm still sitting on the couch. But I think, if you can just focus on yourself and, like you said, where you've come from in the last, year, the last 5 years, the last 10 years, to get just a more accurate reading on, where you're at. That's really a lot more important. And also being gracious to ourselves, because, if we're not giving ourselves credit for just like I just started working out again, and I go to this one class a week. And I have friends that are working out, every day, and I'm like, but hey, I'm doing my one class and I'm doing it every week, and that's more than I've done for the last 3 years. So I'm, that's something I'm trying to do to kind of keep myself motivated, and I know that I'll do better. I know as I build strength and stamina, I'll be able to do more like 2 and 3 times a week that I'm working out. So being gracious to yourself, super important.
Yeah, and becoming the best that you can be. Some of us start off life with an enormous amount of disadvantages, and some of us start off life with a whole lot of advantages, which we may squander if it seems all too easy. But if we look at what we were yesterday and last week and last month, and improve ourselves just one tiny amount in the week or the month ahead, that's all it takes. You just need to. It's very gradual. It's so gradual that people would wonder, well, will that make any difference? I can tell you, it makes all the difference in the world. Most of the things that we do that are terribly important, like eating the right kind of food. If I eat awful food today, it might make me feel a little bit sick, but it won't make any great difference. But if I eat awful food for a month or a year, I'm destroying myself. If I eat good and wholesome food, particularly a non-processed food, my health will do well. My doctor was quite surprised a week ago when I took my normal blood tests, and on every measure of my blood testing at 71, I'm very good. And he always seems surprised because he has a lot of clients that, have all sorts of abnormalities by that age. But I do eat good food, and it's something I've valued. You can see behind, we have gardens where we grow food. We have orchards, and I grew up with the good fortune of having good food at my parents' place.
But even for those even for those who don't have the fortune of having wide yard to have gardens, and even if you have a patio, you can have pots and just stagger some pots with some couple batches of kale or lettuce or whatever, whatever's your go-to veggie, right? Like we can all do something, with, even if we're in small spaces. I mean, that's an opportunity to get creative.
Yeah, well, I would just say, even if you have to buy, eating fruits and vegetables is my number one goal when I eat, to make sure that every day, and if you go to the Mayo Clinic recommendation for a healthy life, they start with fruits and vegetables. Weight Watchers says the same thing. Eat as many of those as you can. And then I like to eat whole grains when I have an option. I have some meat and dairy, probably less than Virginia because she sometimes is a vegan.
No, I have dairy intolerance, so I end up eating a lot of vegan dishes because I did try veganism a few years back, and it was actually quite eye-opening. I learned a lot about cooking with different things, but
I'm a semi-vegetarian in that I don't eat huge amounts of meat and cream and butter and whatever, but I'm sort of a moderate in that department. And if anybody wants to see the best diet, I recommend going to the Mayo Clinic. They have a book for actually people who are dieting to lose weight. I don't know if they have it anywhere else, but they have the best book on what it is that we should eat that I've ever read in my lifetime. And they are not even promoting their diet. The first thing they say is, should you really be on a diet? Have you discussed this with your doctor? Not, you can buy 47 diet products from us and we'll look for a new way to sell you something every day that you're on this diet.
Yeah. Well, and everybody's their own, individual. I mean, it's not one type of diet that works for one person is not going to work for another person.
But they have a food pyramid. They have a food pyramid where what's on the bottom, fruits and vegetables, are the things that are best for you. And then whole grains and beans and legumes on the next level. Then meat and dairy, and then you finally get up to things like oils, some of which are better or worse, and fats. And then finally at the pinnacle of the pyramid is sugar, which is just about the most poisonous thing that we can do, is adding lots of sugar to whatever we eat. And unfortunately, processed foods, as many people know, have a habit of adding tons of sugar. And in my case, because my blood pressure isn't perfect, I avoid salt.
Well, since we're talking about health, I think it's also important to mention the different aspects of health. I mean, there's physical health, so we think about what we're eating, what we're ingesting, and then there's environmental health. Like, do we live in a place where there's high levels of pollution and environmental toxins? So there's things you can do, by getting, obviously clean products, for inside of your home and cosmetics and all those things. And then there's mental health too. I think there's so much emphasis put on the food that we eat, but what about mental health, and what do we need to take care of that? Well, we need more sleep. We need good relationships, and it even can connect back to diet. Things that are causing inflammation, and then
what diet do you give your mind is another way of putting it.
That too.
What diet do you give your emotions? Your psyche, your spirit.
So important.
And those diets are probably even more important than the diet that you have for your physical health.
I think so. I really think so. I think it's a big. I mean, they say that that anxiety is like is it anxiety or was it depression? Probably both. But I remember reading some article, maybe it was in Time, and they were talking about how this is such a common thing, and it's increased, like, I don't know, something significant over the last 30 years. The number of people that struggle with depression, the number of people that struggle with anxiety, and that really calls for some action on our parts to, like, what can we do to take care of our minds?
I think we can promise our viewers that if they listen to our videos every week, that all of their problems are going to go away.
There we go. That's the goal. No.
No, I'm teasing, but the reason we're having these conversations is to try and get people to think about what's important in your life. We don't have all the answers, and I'm not pretending that
no,
we do.
we're
But-
definitely not a how-to. I think the big thing for me is just even having the conversations, and then in hoping that you in turn will have the same, similar or just spin-off, conversations from what you've heard, with those who you care about and engage. I think that's a starting place that we all need, right? It's just
Yeah.
to make it a regular talking piece.
Yeah, and I guess the one rule I try to follow is not trying to improve other people. I'm trying to improve myself as my number one client. I'm not trying to improve Virginia in any way. She's perfect. So, no, I'm teasing. No, we all help each other, and when we become good friends, we're allowed to say things to people that if you weren't good friends, you couldn't say to people. They would get terribly annoyed.
So that's our takeaway there. Surround yourself with good people, and if you don't have them, you got to go find them.
Yeah, no, it's
Go find the
very
good people.
it's very important. Anyway, we've probably said enough for one more day, and it's a pleasure to do this. And I think we found an attractive spot to do it. I hope you weren't totally distracted by the background and by the airplanes flying by and our dog wandering by.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to doing our next episode next week. We're still trying to decide on a day that we're going to release these, but yeah, thanks for watching.
Thank you.